to Restore recording. We are going to move through a gentle flow today for around 30 or so minutes, and then we'll come to some restorative postures. Things that you might want for your practice. So I've got a blanket today. See, I'm sat on my blanket. You might want a blanket. I've also got a bolster. So if you wanted to grab yourself a bolster, you could grab one of those. You could also grab a pillow of any kind. Bed pillows are fairly nice. They're quite big, especially if you've got a real cushiony one. If you did happen to have a second bolster and you want to practice with two, awesome. Feel free to grab two. And anything else that you might like around you. So second blanket perhaps to use, or a pillow to come under the head. All of those like things that you might want to make a cozy nest for our rest at the end. Maybe even a cup of herbal tea or something that you like to practice with. We will, or I guess I will guide us through some movement, but I'd really encourage you to take what it is that you need today. So this is a recording, so there won't be as much feedback directly, but I'm going to try and offer options throughout so that perhaps if you use this recording more than once, each time you come to it, you might find a slightly different kind of variation, or maybe it lands in a different way today. So making sure you've got everything that you need. And then I thought we would start lying down today. So like I mentioned, I've got a blanket underneath, or roughly around the center of my mat, and that would be around my hips today. My mat is a little bit cold, so that blanket's there for support, but also for a bit of coziness and warmth. And you might do the same if you would like to. But finding whatever feels comfortable for you reclined here. So have a wriggle, maybe take a few breaths, or even a stretch. If you would like to take the legs long here, you could take them long along the mat. I'm going to take mine to constructive rest, where the feet are a little bit wider, perhaps the edges of the mat, and the knees knock together here. So they've got that bit of support through the center line, or constructive rest. And if that feels like something that you might like to take here, then perhaps you take that as well. Hands could land on the belly. They could also land away from you. And then giving yourself a moment to really land and arrive in your space. So for me, that means taking a few really deep breaths in and out. You might also take a look around your space. And then you're welcome to either focus up on the ceiling, maybe you find a point or an area that the eyes focus on, or if it feels okay to do so, you feel fairly safe in the space that you are, then you might close down your eyes here. But either way, perhaps there's that sense of drawing our focus inwards, so towards the body. I thought we might start today's practice with a little bit of pranayama or breath work. Very optional. It might be that you leave this today and you stay with your natural rhythm of breath. If you would like to join in that pranayama, then hands might come towards the belly here. Maybe they land somewhere on the belly. And then we might start by each inhale we take here, expanding the belly upwards. And then each exhale that we take, sinking the breath down with the belly. Those inhales might be through the nose and exhales through the nose as well. If it feels more comfortable to take the breath through the mouth, feel free to take that. Perhaps that slow, steady inhale through the nose, filling up or expanding the belly upwards, and then sinking back down on the exhale. So we're drawing the breath all the way down to the lower part of our lungs here. Even though I'm saying drawing it down to the belly, obviously our lungs are not in the belly, but that sense of the breath being drawn deep down within. And we might take another 5 rounds of these breaths together. Maybe they're really slow, steady, but deep breath. Maybe there's one more breath together. And the next place that we might come towards is the sides of our body, perhaps all around the ribs. And again, if it helps, you might take your hands somewhere on the ribs. You might leave them where they are on the belly. And then the same kind of thing, but this time, rather than breathing towards the belly, perhaps breathing towards the ribs and seeing if we can expand outward. So each breath in, the ribs expand outward. And then each breath out, they draw back inward. Perhaps finding a rhythm within these breaths here. Taking another 5 or so in your own time. That slow, steady inhale through the nose, expanding the ribs outward. Maybe there's even a little bit of warmth from your hands, where your hands are rested on the body. Taking another 2 rounds in your own time. And then the next place that we might come towards is the very top of our lungs here. So again, if it's helpful, you could take your hands to that space. And it might be around your collarbones, you know, that kind of very, very top of the lungs, maybe the pectorals, around there. And they might rest just below your shoulders. And then this time on the inhale, seeing if we can draw upwards or towards the chin on the inhale. So it might be in places like your lower back move as well. So that inhale into the upper part of our lungs as we expand upwards towards the head, and then exhales to sink back down. And again, we might take this around 5 times. So there's 5 slow, steady breaths in, and slow, steady breaths out. Starting to try and create a bit more space in the lungs. Perhaps to breathe more deeply. Whether you're just waking up or whether you have just been through a busy day. little pocket of space to work with the breath. And perhaps find those slightly deeper, bigger breaths. Maybe there's one more round into the top of the lung. Then it's up to you. Maybe there was a comfortable space of those three where you had the hands, or you could take the hands alongside the body here. Now, invitation next is to kind of breathe into all of those spaces at the same time. So using all of the parts of our lungs here. So that inhale to fill up belly, to fill up the ribs, to fill up the top of the chest as well. And then exhales back out. And these might be really deep breaths. So if it's more helpful, you can breathe through the mouth here. Filling the lungs with that fresh air. And then big breath out. Another 5 again here in your own time. Maybe there's one more big breath together. And you might return to your natural rhythm of breath. If you're really enjoying those deeper breaths, feel free to stay with them for a little bit longer here. You might take a moment to check in with how you are doing after we've spent that little bit of time to kind of ground and arrive. So noticing any sensations or feelings, thoughts that are arising for you here. And it might even be that in this moment you've decided, you know what, today's not the day, and then you come back to this video another time. Or maybe you do want to stay here and continue with the practice. So giving yourself that space to make that choice. And if you would like to come towards movement here, we might find gentle wriggles through our fingers and through our toes. And then perhaps taking the arms overhead here, finding a little bit of stretch through the arms. So you could have the hands wide, or you could interlace the fingers. There's my yawn. Maybe you even take a yawn. Toes might reach away in the other direction. Maybe that big stretch. Hands could also reach wide if you prefer here. And then from here, perhaps drawing knees in towards the chest. So they could either kind of hover around in the air. If you want to take your hands onto the knees, you could find this instead. Option to explore a little bit of movement here. So we might take a few rocks side to side. And you could be a bit curious here. So maybe there's circles with the knees, or you could draw one knee out to the side and kind of move it around a little bit. So working into the hip. And if you have been doing that, maybe you take it on the other side as well and take the other knee out to the side and move around a little bit. And we'll often come to a kind of repetitive movement in these practices. So that sense of coming back to the same movement or back to a similar movement. And one of those that we might work with today is to place just one foot. So I'm taking my right foot down onto the mat here, and then slow and steady, extending that leg away from you. Giving the knee that's into chest a little bit of a squeeze. And then we're going to repeat that on the other side. So this time our left foot releases long, slides along the mat away from you, and then your right knee comes in towards the chest. You could give it a hug and a squeeze if you want to. We're going to keep that going. So that foot comes down to the ground and then slides away, coming in on the other side. And that squeeze. Maybe you take a circle through the ankle this time, and then the foot comes down and slides away. So that one more time on each side. Maybe you add in that rotation through the ankle this time, and then foot comes down and slides away. One more time on this side as well. And squeeze, maybe circle, and then taking our left leg down along the mat here. Maybe stretching both legs long here. You might give the toes a flex and a point, so drawing the toes towards you and then moving them away. And then from here, bringing both knees back towards the chest. This time, we might take our legs up towards the sky one at a time. So left leg might reach up long. You might give your right knee a squeeze in towards the chest. So it's a really similar movement here. From here, taking your right leg up to the sky and then bringing your left knee into the chest. You could give it a squeeze. And then keeping that going here. One leg finds the sky, opposite leg finds the chest. One more time on each side. Maybe this time you see if you can push the heel up towards the sky. Maybe you feel a little bit of lengthening or opening through the back of the leg. And then to the other side, again, you might push the heel up to the sky this time, holding for a tiny bit longer. And then perhaps both legs come up to the sky. Maybe both heels push upwards. You could point and flex toes if you want to. And then dropping the legs down here, letting everything land for a moment. If you want to take knees for a sway, you can. I'm going to find stillness here. And then from here, making our way up through to seated. We can either use the hands to help come up, or you could take your hands and that crease behind the back of the legs, and then take a bit of a rock lengthways along the spine. Maybe there's 3 until we come up to seated here. As we find a seat, if you want to pop yourself onto something here, you could find a cushion to sit on. I'm going to fold over my blanket and sit on the blanket here. I'm going to work a little bit with a mudra, one of our hand positions, to help draw some focus. You could either be cross-legged, you could have your legs out in front of you, or you could be sat on a chair here. That mudra even we might work with today is our lotus mudra. So to start with, hands come towards the heart, palms and fingertips together. And then to kind of represent that lotus flower, our middle finger and then the 2 fingers next to it might slide away from each other. That kind of opening of the middle of our hands, our small finger or pinky finger and our thumb might stay together here. It's got that kind of rounding in of the hand, our lotus mudra. And perhaps our focus comes down towards the fingertips here. So that gentle kind of tuck of the chin under. I'm going to take this into a bit of movement. So at the time of recording this video, the signs of spring are just kind of joining into the world. Those flowers are starting to bud. And so this is where this kind of inspiration came for me. So our lotus flower, we might start to open that up to the sky, hands drawing wide, and then palms drawing back together. So almost kind of representing those buds of our flowers opening up. We're going to keep this movement going. So each time your palms might come together first, and then you might peel open to your lotus and then open to the sky. I'm going to talk through some options as we move here. As you peel the fingers open, perhaps your eyes follow the fingertips And then draw back down, looking towards your fingertips as they come back together. So we're moving through the neck as well here. If you enjoyed that breath work right at the beginning of our practice today, perhaps you take those big inhales again as we open up through the fingers, and exhales as we come back. Take another 2 here together. And then eventually drawing our hands back together. Those fingertips might peel apart here. And then taking this into our forward fold. So we're fairly slow with our practice today. So we might not come in really deep. Hands could find the floor here. So you could either stay up on your fingertips and lean the chest slightly forwards here. Maybe you feel that around the lower back. If you want to place palms down, you could do the same. And you might also bend through the elbows to draw the chest or just the forehead down a little bit further. Option is there to tuck the chin under here, whichever variation you are working with, to find that bit of length through the back of the neck. Maybe when you tuck the chin under, you start to feel that stretch down the back of your body. And again, you might take a really deep breath in and out here. And then drawing all the way back up to seated. We're going to come around onto our hands and knees here. So you could roll over the knees, or you could take a swivel to the side. Again, I've got that blanket here, so I'm going to make most of that today and take my blanket underneath the knees for a bit of support. Hands come roughly under shoulders, knees come roughly underneath the hips. We might focus on, again, the fingers being spread really wide here. So there's a bit of a stretch through the hands, but also a grip back into the mat. So the top knuckle, you might take a little bit of a squeeze as if you're trying to grab your mat here. So we're activating through the hand muscles, really small, subtle movements. And then finding some cat-cows together. So belly drops down here, shoulders drop down as well as we look forward. Tailbone is pointing out behind us. And then tucking our chin towards the chest, arching through our back and pushing into the hands. Tailbone tuck. And then taking that in your own time here. So that movement backwards and forwards through our cat-cows. Again, if you would like to add breath in here, inhale to look forward and exhale to look back. And it could be that you stay with this movement forwards and back for another 5 rounds here. If you would like to take that into the sides of the body a bit, you might start to wriggle the hips side to side instead, or you could do some combination of both of those things. But we're taking movement into the spine here. We never have to be kind of exact with our movements. So perhaps doing what feels good for you here. And for me, that's a really good wriggle around with the hips, also around with the head. You could give the head a bit of a shake there as well. And then coming back through to center here. You can find a little bit of movement forwards and backwards. So hips might drop back towards the heels as if we're coming into our child's pose. But rather than dropping the chest down here, chest stays up and then drawing the shoulders back up all the way forward. Shoulders might draw just beyond your hands, and then our cow pose to drop the hips back. So it's really similar to our cat-cow, but we're working more with moving our center of gravity forwards and backwards. There might be a really strong sensation when you come forwards into the hand. Maybe you take another 2 rounds. If you'd rather be doing cat-cow instead here, take that instead. And then again, eventually coming back through to center here. We'll come to our downward facing dog, but we won't be there long today. So toes tuck under, hips draw up towards the sky. Maybe you take a pedal out through the feet here, bending through one knee, bending through the other knee. If you enjoy those breaths again, maybe on the inhale, rising onto your tiptoes, and on the exhale, sinking the heels. And you might do that a couple of times. Maybe there's a few clicks as you move in the ankles. And then from here, we're going to step our right foot forwards and drop the left knee down. Again, you've got that padding if you want it here, untucking or tucking the back toe. See what feels better for you today. And then finding a little bit of stability within this. So you could take your feet wider on train track. You could take yourself near something to hang on. We might come back to that same mudra that we had with the hands here. So palms come to center, but then our hands peel outwards. In this pose, drawing the hips slightly forwards here. So there's that little bit of opening into the front left hip flexor. And then when you're ready, hands open to the sky as the hips draw backwards. And then let's keep that going, that circular motion. Hips draw forwards, hands draw together. Opening up to the sky, hips come back. Take that another 3 times. Awesome. This time, as we take the hands together, hips are forwards, opening the hands up, but holding here. Maybe you take the arms quite wide, palms face forward. So that sense of opening again through the chest. Ooh. And then let's draw hands all the way down onto the hips. We're going to shuffle that front foot forward here, coming towards straightness through the leg. And we could keep a micro bend here in the knee, or you might straighten out through the front leg. Toes come back towards us here. You can't see me, but I've got a hand on the wall. You could also take both hands to hips, or you could take the hands onto your thigh or the floor. Maybe there's that bit of opening into the back of the leg. And then from here, we're going to come to kneeling and then take it over to the other side. So our left leg steps forward. Again, finding your feet and your knee on the ground. Maybe you take that little lean forwards with the hips first, hands might come to heart, and we'll find that same movement again here. So opening our lotus mudra up to the sky, drawing the hips back, and then forwards, palms come together, opening up to the sky. Maybe we're moving with breath again, those inhales to draw up. Exhale to come back. Maybe there's one more round drawing forward, opening up. And then this time drawing forwards with the hip. Doesn't matter how far you come forwards here. And then hands might open up to the sky. Palms really wide here. Maybe the elbows wide as well as we open through the chest, open through the hip. Maybe there's a deep breath in, finding length upwards. And then hands come down to the hips as our hips draw backwards. Again, you might take a moment and take your front foot forwards, that bend, or coming to straightness through the leg. Toes draw back towards us here. You could stay lifted like I am, or you could draw your torso down. Again, hands could find thigh, you could find the ground, you could find something beside you. Taking a couple of rounds of breath here, opening into the back of the leg. And then again, stepping our left knee back towards our kneeling. Hands come all the way to the ground, tucking the toes under. Now we're facing dog. Again, we won't be here long. Option to come up to the top of your mat just once today. So if you would like to join, have feet walking towards the middle of the mat, Hands walking towards the middle of the mat. And we're going to take a slow roll all the way up to standing. So that uncurl of the body up. Oh, my head is just off here. Maybe you have a bit of a wriggle through the body here, a shake through the hands, a wriggle through the hips. And before we come back down to start to find our restorative postures, there's this space here to take 3 or 4 standing sun salutations. And I'm going to talk us through those. We'll move fairly slowly. You can always keep doing a few more. This is a recording, so you can pause and take another few more, or you could do none. So your feet might be underneath hips, or you could take your toes close together here. In fact, maybe having a bit of a look down at the feet here, lifting the toes and then placing them down, lifting the heels and then placing them down. You could do that a couple of times. And then in our mountain pose or our Tadasana, building from our feet upwards. So almost like we're pushing down into the ground. And sometimes I find that micro bend in the knee helps me find that push downwards, whilst the hips draw slightly forwards or tailbone tucks under. And then shoulders open up. Squeeze of shoulder blades behind, palms might face forward. Tuck of the chin. Maybe there's that deep breath. And then from here, hands start to extend up towards the sky, extended mountain pose. Ooh, and then all the way down to our forward fold. From our forward fold, hands find the shins or knees as we lift up halfway. Our halfway lift or our flat back position here. Top of the head might be reaching forward. And then folding back down, hands draw all the way up to the sky, extended mountain pose. And we might take that 3 more times. So all the way back down, forward fold. Lift up halfway. Hands come back down and then sweeping everything up to the sky. I'll cue breath if you want to join with that here. Exhale to find our forward fold. Inhale to lift halfway. Exhale to fold. And then inhale to roll. We might take one more round here, drawing ourselves down to our fold. We're lifting up halfway. Hands come back down. And then sweeping the hands up to the sky. Arms might come together overhead. And then land down at the heart. Taking a moment here. Wriggles or stillness, up to you. And we're going to start to kind of wind things back down into our restorative poses here. We're going to start with our standing forward fold, which might not seem a restorative pose, but see how it goes. Give it a bit of a go. You might want to grab your bolster if you've got one, or anything that brings the height of the floor slightly upwards. You could also do this by taking the hands onto a chair or a block, anything like that. And then let's come back to our mountain pose. So we're standing quite tall here. And then just like we took that slow roll up, we might take that slow roll down to our forward fold. So our chin might tuck in first, and then the shoulders might start to draw forwards, rounding through the shoulders, and then drawing ourselves downwards here until we come into our forward fold. And even if your hands can find their way all the way down to the ground here, we might find something that is higher. So I'm going to take my hands to this bolster here. And then I'm putting a tiny bit of kind of my weight into the bolster. Or perhaps it's matched evenly between the feet and the hands. And then taking a bit of time to see what feels comfortable for you here. So you might want to take the legs a little bit wider than they normally are in this pose. And you might want to take a bit of a soft bend through the knee. Seeing if wherever you are, we can let the head be heavy. So you could give it a good shake, that kind of yes, no thing again. And we'll be here for around 30 seconds. So that could either be in stillness, or you could be taking a sway side to side as the torso moves over and then over to the other side. Maybe focus comes towards the feet and the hands. And then when you're ready, lifting ourselves up just enough here to shuffle our feet back closer together. Maybe we find our halfway lift here, but a softer version so we could be a little bit relaxed through the shoulders, a little bit relaxed through the hips. And we're going to take this all the way back down to our seat here. You want to have your bolster nearby you somewhere. And then drawing ourselves down, no particular way to come down here. If you do want to take Malasana or a squat of some kind, you could take that. I happen to have landed on my blanket here, but we're coming into a variation of our forward fold. So you might want to sit on something. So I've got my blanket here. You could also sit on a book, a block. And then our feet come out in front of us. So we're going to take our wide leg, our Padasana or our butterfly, where our feet are together or towards each other and our knees are a little bit wider here. I've been working with this recently where I don't actually have the feet touching as well. So there's even more kind of space in the center for it. And this sometimes works quite nicely to have a little space for your bolster, and then your feet can kind of hug themselves up to the bolster here. You might experiment with that, see how that feels. And then your bolster, you could either pop your forehead on it here, so you've got that support, or you could wrap your arms around it, maybe the chin comes onto it. If the knees feel like they would like some support here as well, you could place blocks or things underneath your bolster, underneath your knees. So take a moment here to really kind of find what feels good for you. Have a wriggle. In these restorative postures, we're looking for comfort and ease rather than perhaps strong sensations. So if there are any really kind of niggly bits or bits that feel uncomfortable, we might want to find something that feels more comfortable. So if having your knees like this is just not your thing, you could take your legs wide as a wide leg fold, or you could take your legs together. So take that moment here to kind of draw in. And then as we come into our restorative forward fold, maybe we take those 3 deeper breaths together. Deep breath in, filling up the lungs. Maybe your chin is resting down here. Again, that sense of kind of drawing inward. Space is there to take sways or wriggles. And as we move through these restorative postures, I'm going to talk less and less. And we might extend the length of time that we are in each one of them. So this one will be here for around 2 minutes. You can always move out before or stay longer. Focus might be a gentle awareness on breath. It might also be that texture you can feel on the feet or the toes. And perhaps taking a listen to all of the things that you can hear around you. So whatever's going on in the space where you're practicing, or in the home, or wherever it is that you are today, we're still awake and we're still aware of everything that's going on, but we're taking this time to rest here together. On halfway through here, so taking any movements that you would like to, or maybe you found a sweet spot of stillness. In each pose that we come out of, I'm going to offer the option of some gentle movement. If you would like to just stay in the pose longer and not take that movement, that's also fine. You do feel like taking movement, it's there if you want it. So if you're feeling ready to come out of this pose, we might slowly draw ourselves upwards, and then taking our bolster off to the side here, using our hands to draw the knees together towards each other. And then perhaps taking our hands behind our back here, or just behind the hip, and then taking that sway of the knees side to side. It could be quite small, it could be quite big, it could almost be twists. We are going to come all the way down onto our back in a moment and find some twists. If you were feeling a little bit chilly in that last pose, feel free to grab bits and pieces to keep yourself warm. So warm, cozy socks, maybe an extra blanket to drape over you. We'll start to set ourselves up to come all the way down onto the mat here. Again, if you want to place a blanket underneath the hips and then have a second to drape over you, you can. And then placing our bolster over to one side. So I've taken mine over to the left of my mat, roughly where my legs will be for our twist. And then slowly rolling ourselves down onto our backs. If you do have a second blanket here, you might grab that near you so you can wrap yourself up here. And then drawing our knees in towards the chest, and we're going to take those knees over towards our bolster. So landing the knees on the bolster here. So you could stay here. If you prefer to take the variation where you take the bolster between your knees, you could take that instead. So it's almost like a hug of your bolster. So find which one you want to work with here. You can always do one on one side and one on the other. You might draw knees closer or further away. So again, we're looking for something that feels comfortable because we will be here for 3 minutes on each side. Before actually. And then there's two options again within this twist. So if you're looking for that more twisty variation, you might draw your shoulders down onto the mat. So coming onto your back here, and hands might reach wide in a T shape. If you're looking to more curl up on one side, your shoulders might both turn. So chest turns to face your bolster. You can kind of drop the arms down here. So again, deciding which of those two you would like to work with here. And you could always change because I'll let us know when we're halfway through. Deciding where your hands want to be. Is it wide? Is it on the torso somewhere? And again, maybe you wrap yourself in a blanket. You'll find that warm coziness. Maybe there's a few deeper breaths. Your focus might be up on the ceiling. You might have closed down your eyes here. With each exhale, sinking down into your mat. And finding softness in the shoulders. And finding softness around the jaw and the face. You might gently open the mouth a little here. With even softness in ankles and feet and hands. And as you start to draw in towards your rest here, and if you are looking for focus, perhaps listening into sound again with breath, you also might let your focus drift here. So drifting wherever it's taken today. Thoughts start to pop up and then float away. Maybe over time you melt deeper and deeper into this pose or into your rest. We're around halfway through. So if you did want to adjust the twist slightly or draw over to one side more, you might take that here. When you feel ready to start to draw out of this pose, maybe your focus comes back to the hands. Draw your knees around through to center and then pause. Knees are up towards the sky. If you want to take movement here, you could again take a sway through the knees, but perhaps there's stillness. We're going to set ourselves up for the other side. So you could either kind of sit up and grab your bolster, or you might be able to push it over to the other side. And then when you're ready, drawing your knees in and then over onto your bolster on the right hand side. And again, taking a moment here to kind of adjust if you want the bolster between your legs, if you want it on top. You might have the back of your body on the mat here, shoulders down, or you might be curled up facing over to the right. Taking that time to choose what it is you would like here today. And again, maybe there's those deeper breaths as we draw in. With silence or with music if you have that at home for this one. If you want focus again, those sounds are there, or your breath. Now let us know when it's time to draw through to our final resting pose. Around halfway through, if there were any movements that you wanted to take here, adjusting your twist, giving yourself that permission. And then you feel ready to start moving. We might gently draw ourselves out of our twist. Maybe the knees come to the thigh again. We're going to be setting ourselves up for our final resting pose next. So if there's any movement that you want to take here, feel free to take that. It might be something like a stretch or drawing the knees in, whatever it is you need. And again, that space is there just to be still if you'd prefer. And the final resting pose today could be everything stretched out along the mat. Again, you've got your bolster or your cushion perhaps to place underneath the knees. If, like me, you've got a bit of space here on a wall or on a chair or even a bed, you could take a variation where we have legs up the wall. So if you did want to play with that, you might curl up on your side, thumbs real close to the wall, and then kind of swinging the legs up here so that we do have the base of the spine or your butt on the wall here. And then the legs, you kind of rest upwards. For me, I've got a very gentle micro bend in the knees here. It might be that you want to come towards straightness. So if this is an option that you would like to take, you could take this, or you could be lying down flat on your mat. But again, that invitation is to find something that feels comfortable or feels restful for you here. And even if you've got your legs up the wall, we might kind of drape a blanket around our feet to keep warm and then kind of snuggle it around. You could even kind of tuck it underneath your shoulders. So whatever variation you are taking here, giving yourself that time to set it up. Maybe there's those deeper breaths as we draw in. You might find a soft focus up on the ceiling somewhere, or closing down the eyes. Be here for that little bit longer in our rest together. So giving yourself permission to move out at any point. Sinking into your mat again. You be supported. Us in silence again till the end of our rest. Pose. Do please move when you need to. Now when it's time to think about drawing back together. or so rounds of breath. The focus might come back to fingertips, to toes, finding gentle wiggles. And over time, you might expand those movements into wrists and ankles. Maybe you take a roll of your head around. If you have your legs up the wall here, you might draw knees in towards the chest or slowly lower them down. And if you are lying long along the ground as well, you might draw knees in towards the chest. Maybe you want to take a stretch. That invitation is to, at some point, perhaps take a roll over to one side, whichever side you land on, and then pausing there as well. In your own time, if you would like to come through to seated to close the practice together, then perhaps making your way round to a seat. Could be on your prop, could be on the floor or a chair. You might bring cozy blankets and things with you. Giving yourself a bit of time to find that here. If you'd rather stay down low today, feel free to stay where you are. If you are coming through to seated, finding your way there. Feet. Take a bit of a stretch through the neck just before we close here. So hands might find the knees. You could also take them alongside your hips on the ground. And then dropping one ear down to the walls, one shoulder. Doesn't matter which one you take this to. Holding here. And then drawing chin down through center. We take that over to the other side. Seeing if we can let the shoulders drop down. Let be heavy. And then taking that a few more times, a really slow roll through center over to the other side. You could either pause here or you could keep rolling. Maybe there's even a bit of a lift of the chin upwards. So exploring movement here in the neck. If you want to, you might also crunch the shoulders up and take a few rolls through the shoulders as well. Eventually coming back through to the center. Hands might stay where they are. They could also land in your lap or your belly. Perhaps finding a tiny bit of tallness through the spine here. So that's some kind of growing tall. And we might take 3 breaths together here before we close. So if you're joining, breath in, just like we did at the start, filling up belly, ribs and lungs. And then big breath for exhale. And we might take that twice more. And one more. And then when you feel ready to close your practice today, hands might come towards each other. Maybe there's that bow to self and to each other here. And we will close that practice there today. Thank you for joining.